honestly. And of course, let's give a shout out to New Yorkers in the room here. Yes, New York. And of course, I want to give a shout out to my Renaissance team. Thank you for your amazing and passion to be here and your commitment. And of course, I want to thank all my CDFI friends and partners who have continued to support me and the Renaissance team on this journey. You make me cry, Seth. For those of you who don't know Renaissance, we are a small business loan fund located in New York City. We were created 25 years ago by Asian Americans for Equality, also known as AFI. Our focus has always been on immigrant small business owners who struggled with cultural and language barriers to access small business assistance. Sadly, Renaissance is one of the very few CDFIs that places a focus on serving the Asian American community. When people think of the Asian American community, it's as if we don't exist and that our struggles do not matter. Did you know the CDFI fund today does not recognize Asian Americans as a target population? There is a stereotype that Asian Americans are model minorities and that we have no financial struggles, which is completely untrue. My Renaissance team can attest to that every day, with 500 low-income Asian entrepreneurs coming to us every year asking for help and asking for capital. One of the reasons many of these struggles go unnoticed is that on current data, Asian Americans include more than 50 detailed race groups that can differ dramatically across key social and economic indicators. Just like Louise said, check that box. And often, that average household income level looks better than it really is. As Asian Americans, we are calling for disaggregated data. We want to demonstrate the true vulnerability of the AAPI community, especially when we are the fastest racial growing group in the US. Recent census data shows in the last 20 years, Asian American population grew by 81%. We are 7% of the US population. We are a racial group that cannot be ignored in our financial system. Like many of Renaissance's clients, my family immigrated to the United States for economic opportunity. They came from a very poor village in China. They did not speak English and therefore struggled to find work. The only job opportunity my parents had was to work in a Chinese restaurant, even though back in China they were engineers. But to my parents, these local small businesses in Chinatown were a lifeline. They provided economic opportunity to have a living and some sort of economic stability to raise a family. After a decade of struggling, my parents saved enough money to start their own restaurant. The restaurant did well. It put my brother and I through college, and they even bought a home. Success, right? Unfortunately, things happen and life happens. My mother was hit by a car and was hospitalized for months. My family fell into financial difficulty and the medical bills were growing. And at the time, in the early 90s, there was no such thing as a CDFI. And with my parents' limited credit history, they could not access traditional capital to help them with the bills. Like many immigrants, my parents turned to predatory lenders in their community. Very soon, my parents lost their home as well as the business. My family's immigrant story has so much in common with many Renaissance clients and the Asian American immigrants. Because of our limited language capacity and our lack of understanding of the financial system, we are preyed upon and often cheated out of our hard-earned money. Yet, we are too proud to let others know of our shame. we stay silent in our own pain. We hope for someone to extend a hand to help us, but often we find no support and no resources because, as the pandemic has harshly revealed, many people consider us, Asians, not part of the American fabric. Therefore, when my Asian community was struggling during the very early onset of the pandemic due to outright xenophobia and racist attacks, we cried out for increased awareness and the need for capital to help our struggling businesses, even in February 2020. We were ignored. And I really had to ask myself, what does equity really mean? As a result, Renaissance decided, heck, start our own emergency loan fund to save our own community. And so on March 27, 2020, we were the first CDFI to launch a COVID emergency loan fund and began deploying money to save our businesses. We just didn't care, just get money out to save our businesses. And I'll never forget that night when New York City sheltered in, I was desperately calling my funding partners for help. To all my funders, you know who you are. Thank you for the lifeline and for caring about the Asian community and recognizing that we are all struggling together and need to uplift each other. You enabled Renaissance to do the mission work that we're called to do. As a CDFI, we are called to take on risk because we are the small business first responders to our community. If we don't save them, who will? What I'm trying to say is this: don't overthink risk. Don't become too calculated, too fearful of risk, that you lose empathy and trust for your community. Never forget, high risk yields high reward. And what higher reward than to invest in our communities where the yield is immeasurable and invaluable. Our communities still need our help today from organizations like Renaissance and all those represented here today. In our case, Renaissance serves communities like Chinatown, Manhattan, Sunset Park, Brooklyn, Flushing, Queens, and these communities are still experiencing some of the highest commercial vacancy rates across the New York City neighborhoods. We all need to work together that helps these struggling communities, and we cannot do it alone. I am still searching for the meaning of equity. This will perhaps be my life's work. This work is personal for me because every business I can help and save, it's like saving my parents. And so I'll end on this note. Whenever we discuss diversity, equity, inclusion, I hope the dialogue includes Asian Americans because we also face discrimination and struggle to access capital. I believe if all of us come together in unity, we will no longer accept crumbs, but together we can leverage a larger piece of the pie for all of us. Thank you.